Hey friends! Today I'm going to show you how we funked around and found out how to transform clear plastic egg cartons into passable barnacles. I had been collecting these clear plastic egg cartons for a while. I loved the shape of them, and I just knew instantly they were going to end up in my Davy Jones locker installation as some kind of underwater aquatic growth. So after I collected many of them, I went out to my spray paint booth, also known as the bed of my pickup truck. I remembered to shake the can of paint. This is a Paint Plus primer before starting. And also, I wasn't sure how the paint was going to adhere to the egg cartons, so I chose to paint the inside rather than the outside. That way, if someone has to clean my barnacle sculpture later on the outside, they're not coming in contact with the paint. The paint is just having less human contact. I started off this project being very precious, conserving paint, spritzing, and in the end, it just required, push the button, hold down, spray the hell out of it. After my egg cartons have dried, it is time for me to cut them apart and begin constructing my barnacle shapes. I will admit here that I proceed with reckless abandon. I did not wear gloves on a previous project, so I have some kind of sticky glue on my hands that will not wash off. I also am being absolutely bonkers with scissors safety. I did not end up injuring myself, but this is not proper handling of any of these tools. There are several methods that I used to create the whole of each barnacle. I used a hot wire on the majority of them, which was by far the easiest option, but not everybody has a hot wire. I've seen people use hot glue guns that have a metal tip, like a wide cone metal tip. I don't have one of those. So in this video, I'm demonstrating stabbing it with tiny razor sharp scissors and using a lighter to burn the edges. I strongly recommend being more careful than me if you are going to attempt this. Because I am creating a sculpture that is inspired by an organic object, I don't feel like I have to be super precise with cutting things apart. Having things be irregularly shaped is going to give it more of an authentic feel. So once I have chopped apart my little barnacle egg shapes, then it's time to start piecing them together. This hot glue gun that I am using has a high temperature and a low temperature, and these egg cartons are weenies when it comes to applying heat. It takes almost no heat for them to get misshapen and start slumping and lose their directional integrity. So I just have to be very careful with applying the hot glue, not putting a whole bunch, and being aware that it could just melt the whole mother. So it's just about playing. It's about stacking and finding interesting ways to balance them. It's just about design and form and going with the flow. Once I am satisfied with my assemblage of randomized barnacles, I then need to get Caulk and fill in all the random little negative spaces that I don't want to leave open. I also am going to do my best to cover any of the visible hot glue. It is very important, and I cannot stress enough how much I hate silicone. I'm not talking about silicone, I'm talking about paintable caulk. I don't fart with silicone. I hate it. So, back to the caulk. I just squish it into the nooks and crannies using the caulk gun thingy, and then I just get my fingers in there and smear it all over. It does not matter that I'm making a big mess, because once it's dry, it just crumbs. I can just wipe it right off of my barnacles. It does not overly stick to the plastic of the egg crate, so it just cleans up really nice. Once the silicone has had a chance to dry or set for at least an hour. Then I get to add baby barnacles to my barnacle sculpture. I achieved this with air dry clay and a multi-surface all-purpose glue. So I use this air dry clay to roll a zillion little balls, and then I would put a dab of glue onto the larger barnacle structure and then smoosh the little baby barnacle air dry clay ball onto it. I am using a chopstick to press it and kind of blend it into the larger structure, and then using that same chopstick to poke a hole or a divot into each little baby barnacle. This works great. So chopstick, air dry clay, multi-purpose glue, voila, let it dry. The next day, I returned to my barnacle project, ready to give it a paint job. Now, my techniques for painting usually involve lots of layers of washes and glazes and sometimes some kind of chemical reaction to give it a really natural organic feel, and this project is no different. So for my first layer of pigment, I used a cheap, generic purple acrylic paint, which I watered down and then brushed over the entire sculpture like a wash. I focused on the deep places where I wanted to have a more saturated color, and I wanted to make sure that all of the hot glue and the caulk and the air dry clay had at least a wash of this base coat, keeping in mind that I didn't want to completely obscure or obliterate the original color I had spray painted the egg cartons. So after the purple wash has had a chance to dry, then I'm going to come in with my next pigment. Because I have access to Iron Buff from a previous project, I'm going to use Iron Buff to get in the nooks and crannies, to just highlight some areas where I want there to be a variety of pigment. And Iron Buff takes a couple of hours to mature, so when I'm brushing it on, I don't fully know what it's going to look like at the end. So I have to wait and decide if I want to add more or come in with yet another color of pigment. And now I'm in the home stretch of this barnacle project. I'm going to use a white antiquing wax to brighten it up, to really make those textures pop, and also to give it a bit of protection from the moist environment it will be in, because these barnacles are going to be installed in a bathroom, and I don't know how any of these products will handle being in high humidity. So by coating it with this wax, I am giving it a bit of a sealant that's not shiny, that's not intrusive in any kind of way. So with white antiquing wax, I am just using my standard dry brushing technique where I just barely get any on the brush, and then I dab the brush on a different surface altogether before going in and kind of scrubbing the sculpture with a practically dry brush. Beautiful. I also made sure to squish some of the wax into every single air dry clay barnacle hole because of the previously mentioned concern about it being in a moist environment and wanting to protect it from moisture. And that is it. Gorgeous.